Hi, welcome to this video. In this video, we will start writing HTML markup for services section of Wesco website. Let us get started by writing HTML markup for services section. We were done with home section in last section, and now in this section, we will work on services section, which will come after the home section. I'll resize brackets code editor window and browser window to its almost full screen because on small browser window we would not be able to see the proper layout of Wesco website. Let me resize these windows. By this way, we can also switch between browser and the code editor. I'll go to the index.html file and I'll close the head section and the home section so we can only focus on services section. I'll start by writing comment for services section. I'll create a new section for services and I'll add ID attribute for this section, and the value for this ID attribute is services. Before I start writing any HTML markup inside this services section, I want to discuss an important thing with you, and for that we will look at Wesco wireframe. The very first thing we need to create is heading for services section, right? If you notice, we have several other headings for other sections which have same styling. We have heading for about section, work section, team section, testimonial section, and we have headings for pricing, stats, and we also have heading for clients section. If you notice, all these headings share common style, and this is how they will look like. We have heading for about section, work, team, testimonials, pricing, stats, clients. All these sections have kind of content box and with the heading the very first element. So the question is, are we going to write the code for all these sections which have common structure and styling for heading hour and hour again? Definitely your answer is no, because we don't want to repeat ourselves. Therefore, we need a way to create some general markup and CSS for all these sections which share common structure and styling. Let me show you how we can write generic markup and classes for all these sections which represent a look of content box and with the heading the very first element. Inside this services section, we need to create a div, and we will add class attribute, and the value for this class is content box. This will act as a content box for services section. Now the question is why we use class instead of ID. This is very simple to understand. The ID is used when we have to apply CSS property to one element only, as we did in home section where we used IDs for divs. The home section has unique structure and we don't see such structure repeating on Wesco web page. Therefore, home section structure is unique and we used IDs inside home section. Now let us discuss class. As you know that we have several sections with common structure. I mean, they have a kind of content box, and inside the box the very first element is heading, and we are seeing a common structure and styling repeating for several sections, and for that we use class so we can specify a style for group of elements. The class allows us to set a particular style for many HTML elements with the same class. So whenever you feel that you are in need of particular style for many HTML elements, then you use class. Otherwise, use ID for unique or single element. Okay, I'll move forward. We need to create a div for heading inside this content box div. I'll add a div element and I'll add class attribute, and the value for this class attribute is content title. And inside this content title div, we need to add h3 element for heading, and the heading for this section is services. The H element is used for headings and there are 6 different HTML heading tags: H1, H2, H3, H4, H5 and H6, but we will use H3 for VSCO web page. Next, we need to write markup for underline, which will come after each heading. I am talking about this line which comes after the heading. And to create that kind of underline, we need to simply create an empty div and with class attribute, and the value for class attribute is content title underline. We will give some width, height and color later to this empty div in CSS lecture, so it will look like underline for this heading. I'll remove the unnecessary spaces. Okay, we are going to save a lot of time by writing such generic HTML markup and classes, because we will use same HTML markup and classes for other sections which have common content box and heading. You will see the benefit of such generic HTML markup and classes later in this course. Let us see what we have got inside the browser. Okay, now we have heading for services section which is without CSS.